Welcome back. Now, while the so-called festive season is a time for celebration for many, it is also fire season in areas like the Western Cape. And while rain and cooler weather appears to have resulted in fewer veld fires this year, authorities are calling on members of the public to exercise caution, as a lot of these veld fires are as a result of human negligence. So these fires wreak havoc, sometimes destroying lives and dwellings in the process. Trevor Abrahams is a director at Working on Fire, and he joins us now for a little more on this very important topic. Trevor, good to have you. Welcome to Morning Live.
Good morning, Trevor Abrahams, and glad to be back.
Apologies there, Trevor, but thanks so much for your time this morning. So, Trevor, talking about, these fires, and of course, we don't really want to think about anything morbid at this time, but it is a reality. And as we're told that a lot of these fires are actually as a result of human negligence. Let's talk about the responsibility that we as the public have to take for what actually happens.
Yes, Sakina, as you correctly pointed out, we have the fire season that at this point is predominantly in the western parts of the Southern Cape. And typically it starts in December. Climate change has changed some of that from time to time. But it is a very high-risk period for this part of our country. And I think it's incumbent on all of us to observe some of the basic safety measures, particularly with open fires, when there's very windy conditions. Obviously, things like throwing lit cigarettes outside our car windows as we drive along, and any other activity that, has a possibility of spreading a fire. One thing about wildland fires is that it's driven by wind and the vegetation. And as you know, Cape Town has more than its fair share of wind from time to time. And once something starts off, it runs away very rapidly. The images that we see here is the last Table Mountain UCT fire, which started from a very small little fire on Hospital Bend. But within no time, it created what is estimated up to R1 billion of damage over the 4 days that it really burnt there.
And of course, we do remember that fire for the devastation that it caused. But what have we learned from this, Trevor? What were the takeaways for us as a public at large?
I think the takeaways remain the basic lessons. Particularly in open spaces when there's wind, do not have open fires. And of course, the other side of the equation is the kind of mitigation we have. We have the Working on Fire program, which has some 5,000 young people employed throughout the country. We have our aerial resources, our helicopter bombers that you see there. So we, from our side, try to be prepared and able to dispatch at a very short notice to these fires. So we have teams located throughout the Western Cape. There's some 600 and odd firefighters here. And then we typically bring another 5 teams, 25-person teams from other parts of the country to try and bolster the kind of capacity we have in the Western Cape. So by putting these teams in the fire-prone zones, ready to go at the alarm, that's one way we try and mitigate, the ability to control the fire before it gets out of hand. You'll remember in 2017 in Eisner, we lost as much as 800 structures there. 6 people, unfortunately, died in that accident. That happened in extremely windy conditions. That spread that fire very rapidly into the urban area. And that's the case in most of Western Cape. You have wildland coexisting pretty close to urban dwellings. So our ability to dispatch is one of the things. The second thing is our detection. We are able to pick up a start of a fire very quickly. We do ask the public, of course, also to report all fires. It might look benign at first, but I think it's critical that, anyone who spots a fire, we do, in fact, get the indication thereof.
And to that point, Trevor, if an ordinary member of the public comes across a fire in an open space, as you pointed out, what should you do apart from alerting the relevant authorities? Should you stay there? Should you try to put it out? What should you do?
Well, I think one of the warnings we do need to give to the public, once a fire's taken hold, once it starts spreading, they mustn't underestimate how rapidly it can spread. So, obviously personal safety and of others is of paramount importance. If it's just about starting, obviously effort should be made to try and quell that fire at the beginning. But, don't underestimate the capacity of a wildland fire to overwhelm a local area, because that wind spreads it. It doesn't just burn there, the wind spreads embers, and that's called spotting. So the fire can move faster than it's actually burning by virtue of traveling in the wind.
And Trevor, you also touched on the young men and women that you employ to these fire-prone areas. Let's talk about that. I understand you have about 5,000 of them, which is no mean feat. And these are unemployed young men and women, previously unemployed, which forms a big part of your workforce. Tell us about that, and providing employment and training. Talk to us about this initiative, please.
Yes, this is one of the government's most successful expanded public works programs. It was launched in 2003, so we've been going for 18 years. We've employed the youth, unemployed youth in these fire-prone areas, trained them up to become wildland firefighters. Many of them have moved up in management in the organization. 60% of our managers are former firefighters. And many more have actually gone in to join the police, the SADF, municipalities, conservation agencies. So it's a tremendous success story in terms of employment and development of our youth. And so much so that we've able to even go abroad, as you saw when we returned in September on our 4th tour of duty to Canada, where 109 of these young men and women excelled in their job in Canada, in Manitoba. And that's where the Minister of Climate and Conservation gave them personalized letters thanking them and of appreciation for their duty in Canada. So this is a world-renowned program at this point in time that grew from small beginnings in 2003 and now up to 5,000 people that we have throughout the country.
And Trevor, just...
I think I should also...
Apologies, please continue.
30% of them are women, and this is the largest contingent of female firefighters in any such force in the world.
And that is commendable, and as you say, perhaps one of the success stories that we need to tell. But looking at residential fires, because that is also a problem. We have the veld fires, but we've also seen, for example, shack fires, where, again, there's a lot of destruction that is visited to property and lives sometimes. Again, just in terms of advice as we go into this festive season, what should people do to try and remain safe during this time?
One of the elements of our program is also fire awareness education. And so our firefighters, typically just pre the fire season, in the off time, they actually go into communities, they go into schools and do what we call fire awareness training. And that is to, in fact, inculcate in our communities, in our schools, with our educators, some of the basic principles of minimizing the risk of fire. So that includes removing debris and other kind of flammable goods from dwellings, creating safe spaces around dwellings, things like using candles and how one should anchor them so they do not fall over, issues of using open flame equipment such as primer stoves, etc. So these are some of the initiatives that forms part of the Working on Fire program, where we actually go into the communities, often together with the local municipal fire services, to educate the community. So our firefighters get trained in presenting this information to their communities. We've also had one of the sort of offshoots of our program where we've experimented, if you like, with the use of alien vegetation in building structures which are fire resistant. And we've done tests with that in the Paarl area, where we showed where we've lit up shacks, and where shacks that are equipped with this fire retardant material actually withstand the fire and do not spread that. So yes, we do go into the communities, and we have also been experimenting with fire retardant resistant material.
Well, Trevor, we have to leave it there, but thank you so much for the good work that you do, and wish you well over this festive season. And that was, of course, Trevor Abrahams, and he's a director at Working on Fire, just talking to us about their work and, of course, giving us advice on how to stay safe from fires during this festive season.